Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Anita Bucher. Looking forward to our conversation. Did I get the pronunciation about right?
You've got it perfect. Yes.
Sure. So, Anita, thank you for joining us today. Thriving Adoptees. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, Anita is an adoptee, right? So, sometimes I forget to, introduce people's and their role within the constellation, not the triad anymore. It's a constellation. So, what comes to mind when you hear the name of the podcast, Anita, Thriving Adoptees?
I think when I first heard of it, when you first contacted me, I thought about people who have not just embraced their story, but they celebrate their story. And it is easy to walk in that story with joy and purpose and see it being used both for their own benefit and for others.
Yeah. Funny enough, I was just talking to another adoptee before we hopped on the call, and he was sort of saying that he's big into kind of self-improvement uh, stuff, shall we say? Um, but that's for other people, and there's that sense, isn't there, that it brings more meaning if it's not about us, it's about others. It takes us away from our little self and into the bigger self.
Yes. Yes. I agree with that.
Yeah. And because that, and I guess that plays into what you do work, right? Within the
I do.
program.
So just real quickly, so I am an adoptee. I am also a foster adoptive parent. My husband and I have a bio son, and then we several years later we became foster parents and fostered and adopted our youngest son. And one of the things I do here is I help lead and facilitate our foster care ministry. And a lot of those families go on to adopt if the child cannot go be reunified with their family. And so I get to be a part of that whole cycle of orphan to family, permanency, as it were, for children and for families. So yeah,
Uh,
having um, a good feeling, more, it's much stronger than a good feeling, but celebrating my own adoptive journey certainly plays into how I can love and encourage others when they're on in the adoptive journey.
yeah.
So
And yet there's sometimes those sorts of words like joy and celebration, they're rarer, aren't they, in our world today?
sometimes they are. They're very rare, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you got an
but
idea why that is?
I, from the stance of an adoptee, the one where I don't see joy is when people have struggled with the reality of their adoption. They've either struggled with uh, having to be adopted. They can't quite get past why was I given up in the first place? Or they feel that, and you and I have spoken about this before, where you feel alone even though you're with people because you don't feel as connected. And so as I was thinking through our discussion today, and I thought back through my story. I'm older than you are, so I
Not
mean,
much. Not
no,
much, ladies and gentlemen.
but it's been a long time since I came into this world, and adoption was not very popular. It was not positive. It was not accepted and celebrated. And you had asked me once, what is it that has helped me thrive? And I think a couple of things came to mind. One is my brave parents who were willing to step outside the norm and go and pursue adoption and to go take in a child that was not theirs, a child that they knew nothing about. They didn't know genetically, they didn't know personality, they didn't know what I brought to the table, good or not good. And they not only did that, they celebrated that. And from the beginning, I mean, way before I was like 2 months old when I came into their home. So obviously didn't understand a lot of what was going on, but they told my story over and over. So they celebrated my story, including the fact that I had to lose a family, if you want to say it that way, in order to gain a family. And they just they just did a great job of loving me unconditionally and not looking at my adoption as a label, but simply how I entered into the family.
Yeah. I think it's the two things, the two parts of every adoptee story, in terms of the the feeling of separation, or the relinquishment itself,
Mhm.
how we are relinquished and how we are raised is all wrapped up in one experience. And I don't think it's possible to separate it out, really, is it?
Right. Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I can't being orphaned or abandoned or relinquished is part of my story. It will always be a part of my story. Um, and while we knew nothing about why it happened, how it happened, I mean, there was no information shared. My parents were very gracious, and they always took the stance that if your parents had to make a choice, they made this choice because they thought it was best. And we believe they made it with love in mind.
Yeah.
And and I was okay with that, because I thought, well, but of course they would have. I mean, I was a child, obviously, and but I thought, yes, why would I try to imagine some, you know, some horror story that as to how I came into being? And they also, the other thing my parents did is they reminded me, because we are Christ followers, they reminded me that God actually brought our family together and that He was in this from the beginning, from before I was conceived and born, and that if He was involved in it, and I believe He was, then it is for good, even though there was hard things in it. And I remember wondering, why did my parents give me up? But I always went back to the narrative of, I don't know, but I choose to believe that they made the best decision they knew to make.
Yeah. So I think how we feel about being adopted, or let me ask you this a question now.
Mhm.
To what extent do you feel that how we were raised impacts our experience as a whole and our feelings about adoption as a whole?
Yes, yes, for sure. I mean, how the adoptive parents, which I just call them parents, but
Yeah,
uh,
me too.
how they see it, how they respond to it, how they treat it in everyday language and everyday conversations, and how they treat me or any other child impacts how I see it, because I am going to process my feelings based on what I see them feeling and giving me. And that doesn't change. I know, especially having spent so many years doing foster care ministry, that does not change incredible trauma in a child. And there's trauma from the womb that the body knows, the body remembers, the brain remembers, that consciously I don't recall anything, obviously. So that doesn't, all the love in the world, all the therapy, all the, unconditional love, all the wonderful things that a whole family can give you does not erase that, but it can help you process that. Even if you can't say, well, I think it was because my birth mom felt this while she was pregnant, or she took this while she was pregnant, or, whatever. So just because you come into a loving family, an incredibly loving family, does not mean you're not going to still struggle with your own thoughts about adoption, abandonment, relinquishment. Why did this happen? Because there are things in here that my parents can't possibly know. I can't know your thoughts except the ones you choose to share with me. And so I don't want people to hear this and think, well, I should just be happy because I have a family and they love me. But they're still hurt. There's still angst in here. There's questions, for a lot of people. And a lot of the ones that I talk to who are adult adoptees, they struggle because they never really felt like they processed in a positive way their adoption.
Yeah. So we're in danger if we're not careful. We haven't spotted this. We're in danger of blaming the relinquishment for challenges that are really to do with how we were raised.
Um, like you said earlier, I think it's all meshed together. And so while you might be rejecting your parents, we're going to call them adoptive parents, your adoptive parents' love, it's not because they're doing something wrong. It's because somewhere in here, there's still a resistance because someone who should have loved you gave you up and you haven't dealt with that. And so you don't trust to accept the love that is coming to you because they might do the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was speaking to an adoptive mum earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week, and she had had an incredibly tough time raising two kids out of the foster care system who were they were like 4 and 6, these two brothers, and they were taking out their anger towards their birth mother on their adoptive mum.
Yes.
And they were also taking out, there'd been some abuse as well.
Mhm.
So they were taking that, which they didn't know at the time of of adoption, but they were taking that out as well. Um, the more adoptees I speak to, the more I recognize that and realize that I got lucky. Do you know, like I got lucky with my parents,
Yes. Yes.
and my heart goes out to those that didn't get so lucky. If we're to believe Facebook, every single man on this planet is a narcissist. But there's a lot of that gone on, and there's a lot of adopting gone on in the old days that wasn't actually for the child, or the child wasn't put center.
Right. Right.
It was playing a role.
Yes.
Um, but the being raised in that celebratory culture, that celebratory that atmosphere, that home full of that, of the positive, must, as you say, was clearly accelerated the processing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I mentioned this in one of our previous conversations that in light of that, I had a wonderful family, wonderful parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, all of that. And they were very loving and caring. And we would do, family reunions, which is like 100+ people would show up, and we would be together. And I had all that love, and I knew that the people in that room loved me. And yet, one of the things that I realized even then as a child that I still carried was I look across this room and all of these people look alike. They all have, similar nose or similar color hair or blue eyes instead of brown eyes or, whatever. And the realization that in the moment I am different. I am not them. Their blood is not coursing through my body. I don't carry, you know, the genetics of anybody in this room. And every now and then it would just be this, not horrible, but this strong feeling of separated. I'm here, but I'm not connected. Even though, again, I had the love. No one was telling me you don't belong here. But my body, there's a part of me that knows I am not of these people in the way that they are of each other. And I mean, I felt that, into, and not like every weekend, it wasn't common, but every now and then, even in high school and college, want to get together with families, go to weddings or, whatever, that it was like it would just pop back in, these people are so great. Oh, I wish I look, had my mom's whatever, and not having that. But so again, all the love, all the right things, all the truth talk, all the grace doesn't take away the things that are inherently in me because of my womb experience, my birth, my relinquishment, and my coming into the family. That's all there. And but again, that's who I am. And I know that God has used every detail of that to put me where I am now. He's used it all my life, but it's I think in some ways it gives me even greater joy to recognize the blessing of having a family, period, that I have one at all, and that I have one that loved me so well is
Yeah.
just, beyond description. Yeah.
Yeah. Was was there a lessening of the pain around? You said that you felt that uh, separation through high school and college, and was the dissolution of that feeling? Did it was a lessening of that feeling? Does that feeling still go on for you now, or
No, it definitely lessened. And I can't tell you the last time I felt that specific thing. Certainly as I've gotten older and I am now pouring myself into our own family and to friends' families and the families here at our church. You become more outward focused and less inward focused. Um, but I do know one time when let's call it an empty spot, for lack of a better word. That's not a great analogy, but we're going to go with it. um, I do know when that spot was filled for me momentarily. I was at the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit several years ago, and I think it was the second time I'd been to their summit. And I walked into the worship gathering, and there were, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 people there. It was a huge sanctuary. And I knew maybe 10 people who were there for the conference at that time. They were scattered about. I wasn't with any of them, but I knew I'd met a few people. And I walked in, and as soon as I walked in the room, it was like, I thought, oh my gosh, I feel connected to every single person in this room. These are my people. None of us are blood related. None of us are related by marriage. I mean, there was no family connection, except everybody in that room was either an adoptee, an adoptive parent, a minister in, ministering in adoption ministry or foster care ministry or fostering children, or everybody in that room had were like-hearted, Hearted. And I walked in, it's like the Lord said, feel this family. Tell me what you think of this. And it was the most exhilarating moment. I thought, oh my gosh, these are my people. And it pointed out to me, and I knew this in my head. It's not about blood. It's not about genetics. God brings families together in incredible ways. And my family that I grew up with, no genetic or blood, sharing, I had that connection with them. But that day it helped me. I don't know, he just showed me a glimpse of, see, what you've had this, but today you recognize it in a whole new way.
Yeah.
It was just, it was awesome. It was a balm to my soul. It really was.
It was a what to your soul? Sorry.
Balm, BALM. So
Oh,
soothing.
yeah.
It was filling and exhilarating, but it was also just very calming for me. And I have walked in that ever since that conference of realizing I've got family everywhere. I have family here, at the church because we share journeys, share stories and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. That was a taste. That was a taste. It
Oh,
wasn't.
it was. Yeah. Yeah.
It was an experience, a taste, an
It was. It
experience.
was. It was just a momentary, we sang songs, we heard the speakers, we went to our breakout groups. The rest of the conference went, as it should. But at that moment, it was definitely, yeah, it was an anointed moment for me.
It was
It
an energy, I think, was it?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was more than that. I mean, it was the spirit moving, no doubt about it. I mean, his spirit speaking to mine saying, "Okay, look at this. Here's your family. And your family's in North Carolina and your like yeah, a connection that is beyond legal papers. I now pronounce that you're husband and wife, or I now pronounce you're adopted and you get this new last name. Yeah,
This is the mystery of wholeness.
yeah. Yeah, you're not going to find it in the world. It's
This,
just like the
well,
world will,
yeah.
yeah,
But this is like way beyond psychology.
yeah, oh yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
But it's the space.
yeah. And that's my story. You said earlier, that you felt lucky, that you got the family you did. I totally agree.
I
So
didn't I didn't feel lucky growing up. I didn't
okay,
feel unlucky. I just it was what it was. I didn't have
right.
I didn't have the questions. I didn't feel lucky or unlucky.
Hmm.
I just it was what it was.
Hmm.
I have realized that I was lucky
Hmm.
after talking to lots of fellow adoptees
Yeah.
and realizing that my experience, which that I was lucky. Uh,
Hmm.
I hadn't realized that
Yeah.
before when I've heard the stories of people that have been treated like the guy I just spoke to last hour, right? He,
Mhm.
um, he was he's his parents thought he was a problem,
Uh, yeah.
uh, and he was naturally resentful of that. I want to go back. I want to get back to the vibe because we can we can talk psychology till we're blue in the face, but this is the mystery.
Yeah.
This is the mystery of healing.
Hmm.
You know, I had I had a moment a bit like that, a little bit like yours. I walked into a room, and this was you. This happened to you at the first time at this conference.
Hmm.
Mine was at a refresher, like a gathering of people that had been through the same process that I had separately, right? So there was 150 people in the room. Maybe 100 of them have been on the same course as me, but not with me. We did them in groups of 6 or 8. But there's a vibe in the room. And as I came into the room, I looked up to the front of the room, and there was a screen, and the screen was running through a slide deck of all the people that had been, all the groups that had been on this course. And as I looked up to the screen, my kind of passing out picture came up on the screen,
Hmm.
and and tears came to my eyes, and I'm at home. The happy tears there.
Hmm.
Um, this is a hope. This is a homecoming, and it's way beyond anything that you can put into the vibe that you can put into the words.
Right.
You were and well, I would I, I think you were around people that were vibrating at a higher frequency. You know, you go into an office. Well, they used to a woman that worked for me had 5 or 6 staff in the publishing business that I had, and she said she used to come in to work at 9:30 because she was on flexi time because of her dropping her kids off at school. And she said, when I came through the room at the office door, Simon, I could tell whether you were in a good mood or not by the energy in the room and energy in the
Yeah.
office, the energy, you know.
Yes.
So there's a vibration that we give, that there's a vibration that we give off. Um, and that room was the was I think was about the vibe, and my room this experience that I had was about the vibe, and that's what we've got to find. We've got to find our vibe, find our people, but we need to find people that are vibrating at a higher frequency, not the people that are all over social media who are not vibrating at a high frequency, because we're like tuning forks, and we will tune to the level that of people that we're
We are greatly influenced by those that we spend time with. There's no doubt. And we're made for community. We are not made to be a bunch of individual islands. And that doesn't matter whether you're, born into your family, adopted into your family, or whatever. And um, finding community is something that I encourage every adoptee, regardless of their age, is to find people who have been on that journey, both those who are older than them, it's been longer, they've had more time to heal and process, to find to interact with parents who have adopted, and to get more of a full story of what that's like and what that love is like. And I heard someone say that um, if you are wounded in relationship, the only place you're going to heal is in relationship. And so you can't say, well, my bio parents hurt me and I don't trust my adoptive parents because I haven't dealt with this. So I'm going to go off here by myself until I figure it out. Well, you're not ever going to figure it out because God made us for community. He made us to be with others. And you have to be careful who you select, no doubt. If you choose to be with people who are also bitter because of something that happened or angry because of something that's happened or, unwilling to be transparent and accept love when it's extended, then you're not going to get any further than you would if you're sitting by yourself. You'll probably be further behind. And there again, my parents did a great job of, having me. We had a great family, so I had aunts and uncles I could go visit and cousins and things. And we have foster care community. We have our, parents come together on Wednesday nights. So you can be with people who are on, as you said, they're in a different place in the journey, and their journey is personal and it's not the same as mine. But we share aspects of this journey. And so, therefore, these are good people for me to be around because we all desire to love well, to nurture our children, to be nurtured, to process our own issues in that scenario and to do it in a healthy way. And so, yes, absolutely, community is important, is so important. And there, now, I mean, obviously, when I was little and growing up, and even in high school and to some degree college, there weren't adoptee groups that got together on campus and said, "Hey, let's get together and talk. What's your story?" It just wasn't discussed. It wasn't out there, and I am thankful that it is now out there. And there are things like this where people can connect with others, if not face to face over a cup of coffee. Well, we are face to face, but I mean, if it's not physically, sitting across the table.
18 inches apart
Yeah.
on the screen and
Right.
4,000 miles
Right. And
as the
and
satellite signal.
six time zones. Yes. So, that the fact that this is there, I love that you're doing this, that you're giving people a place to be heard because Kurt Thompson says, we all come into this world looking for someone who's looking for us. And that is so true. And having, and then to have a voice to be able to say, why do I not feel as excited about my adoption as you feel about your adoption? Let's talk. Can we just be honest with each other? I mean, that right there's your start of your conversation is, I'm,
Have you heard of a guy called Richard Rohr?
Richard who?
Richard Rohr, Rohr.
No, I have
Okay.
not. Writing that
He's
down.
um he's a he's a minister. He's Catholic. I think he's Catholic minister, and he's also a. I think he's whether he refers to himself as this or other people. He refers to himself as I think a Christian mystic,
Okay.
and he has a book that I've just finished, and it's called The Immortal Diamond.
Okay.
And the reason it spoke to me is I heard him on a podcast, and I thought that this is an interesting guy. And then the title, right? So the Thriving Adoptees logo is a diamond.
Yes.
Richard Rohr's written a book about the immortal diamond, and the immortal diamond is our essence. It's a metaphor for for our wholeness. I think in religious words, it might be called a child in Christ. Does that make any sense? Child in
I not
no,
I don't know that
no,
phrase
no.
or
Or I don't know, something along those. It's about it's spirit, or
uh-huh.
it's consciousness, or it's our uppercase S self. If you're into internal family systems, we mention that quite a lot on the show. Have you heard of that internal family systems?
I think you mentioned it in one of our previous
It's
conversations.
conversations. Okay, so the guy it's a psycho-spiritual approach, and it's not a religious spiritual approach, but essentially he's talking about the spiritual side of it is the is what Dick Schwartz calls the uppercase S self, and that's the self that is buried by our trauma but not damaged by it.
Okay, yeah, I do remember you saying
Yeah,
that.
it's that sort of stuff. Yeah. So Richard, it's an interesting. It's a hard. I found the book quite hard, but there were odd moments of really genius clarity for me. Um, I wanted to go, and because this diamond thing, it really stuck with me. I want to go back to what you said about your focus moving to others, uh,
Hmm.
and the impact of that on your healing, for want of a better word.
Hmm.
Can you share more about that, please?
Um, sure. Well, like I said, obviously growing up as an adoptee and as an adoptee that was openly discussed in the house, in the home, it wasn't hidden, a secret. Um, Adoption has always been just part of my heart. I met very few adopted people growing up, especially kids, but I mean, I did know some. And I love celebrating our commonality in that story. And I loved encouraging them and talking about the very things we've talked about. And so as I was getting older and going to school and, finding ways to serve in the community, mostly through the church is where I've served, then those were the families that I enjoyed interacting with because one, there was a commonality in our story. As varied as they were, there was something there. And I think anytime we allow the Lord, I do know this, the Lord uses every single thing in our life. If we give it to him and say, show me what you want to do with this, he takes it and he uses it. He wastes nothing. And so I wanted him to use me and my story to help others, whether it's parents who are considering adoption, parents who have adopted and they're struggling now, kids who were adopted who are still young, especially teens, or adult adoptees who are still struggling with, I just never really felt like I had closure. I had this or I had that. And being able to, in a conversation, to find that one thing that I could pull from my story that they could relate to, and it would not say, so see, your story isn't that bad, none of that. I mean, it's like I'm validating everything you feel is real. I'm not trying to tell you not to feel that. I'm trying to tell you that there is a way to heal and get past that, whether it's sorrow, it's sadness, it's depression, it's, anger, frustration, bitterness, whatever those things are. And so being able to spend time with foster parents, adoptive parents, just, I mean, there is nothing that gives me more joy than to watch kids who are either in foster care or have been adopted who feel safe, secure, loved, and they are just playing and enjoying each other in that safety. They know that they have a safe base in their parents, and any way that we can help encourage that by giving them other adults in their life who can also be trusted. I'm here for you. I see you. I hear you. I will help you, whatever is huge. And the Lord has blessed it. I mean, we've been doing intentional foster care ministry here since 2009. Like I said, we've always had an adoptive community, so that's always been here. And we're also ramping back up some things to more intentionally reach and come alongside our adoptive parents as well. Um,
So, how does focusing yourself on them benefit you? How does that?
Invariably, the Lord reminds me, you see what I did in the past. You see where this happened. Okay, here's a quick example. I was adopted from an orphanage 10 years ago, actually this week. I was going to a conference and stopped by that orphanage to say hello and say, how are you guys doing? And do you reach out and encourage your churches to come along and serve with you? I encourage you to do that. And in talking to one of the social workers, she had my file in her lap. And she said, well, that's great, but also I can answer questions that have been released, that have been open. Not your whole file is open, but a little bit. And I said, well, no, I don't really have any questions. I'm good. My story's complete. I don't need anything else to add to it. So anyway, we got to chatting and talking and chatting and talking and talked about foster care. And I told her about, our own family journey, and came back and she asked a question and I answered it. And she said, I just think it's so cool that you are actively working in, serving in foster care. I said, oh, absolutely. I said, I've always had a heart for adoption, and the Lord just really has opened up foster care to us, obviously through our own journey, but this too. And she says, oh no, what I think is cool is that you're doing it now and you were in foster care when you were an infant. And there was this awkward silence. And I looked at my husband and he looked at me. We looked at her and she said, you didn't know that. I said, you are correct. I did not know that. I said, which means my parents didn't know that, because my parents told me every two or three things that they knew, as I grew up. And she felt really bad. And I said, no, 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 no. Don't you see? This is just another affirmation that God has been in my story since before I came into being, because he knew the day I was born that what year I would be fostering and adopting and doing foster care ministry. And that it was an emergency placement. It wasn't a very long one, probably a couple of weeks or something, but nonetheless, I was in foster care. And he used that to plant in my heart, not just adoption, which was a huge, huge adoption in my heart. And then somewhere in there, he put in there foster care, which didn't really come to fruit until we actually walked that journey and were foster parents and adopted. And I thought, but of course, absolutely, he used it all. And just things like that he brings back to things that happened before, that we get to see the fruit of. We don't get to see the fruit all the time. There are a lot of things that we won't see this side of heaven, and we have to be okay with that. We don't get to see all the healing we want, but I just know that for me, he has used my entire journey, the good, the bad, the ugly, the blessings, the hardships. And if I'm careful and I listen, sometimes I listen well, sometimes I don't, but then he will use that for the benefit and blessings of others, which in turn blesses me, because it gives me more processing and healing of my own story. Though I would tell you, I feel like I'm quite healed. I feel very positive about my story, have been all of my life. And yet, again, he shows me times. Another one was, I realized one day, my birthday is in July. My second birthday is in September. That's the day my parents came and picked me up at the orphanage. We celebrated the second birthday in my family. We met both, but that was a big deal in our family, was that second birthday. And I remember I was just taking a walk somewhere, and around that second birthday time, and it dawned on me that the day I was born, there were probably not a lot of celebration and joy in the delivery room. I don't know. I haven't talked to the nurse who was there or anything. I have no idea. But when I think about my story, someone was going to give me up. They couldn't keep me. They didn't want to keep, whatever. That there was, I don't know that it would have been sadness, though I think there probably was sadness there. There was sorrow because it wasn't going to be the way you would want it to be. And I had this moment of just, oh man, that's heavy. How am I 50 years old and I've never thought about that before? And at the same moment, the Lord reminded me I was there. He was there, and he was celebrating my birth because he knew. I often say my parents were brave because they took me not knowing what I was going to be like. And yet the Lord chose me before I was born. And he knew exactly what I was going to be like. All the ugly stuff, all the mean stuff, all the everything negative. He knew exactly what I was going to do every second. And yet he set his love on me and chose me before the foundations of the earth, but certainly before I was conceived and brought into this world. And he reminded me that day I was there and I was celebrating your birth. And this is where, and wait till you see what I've got planned for you. And then here I am, many, 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 many decades later.
So a couple of words spring to mind, but they don't do they don't do justice to the enormity of what you've been describing. Uh, so I'm going to mention them in the hope that you come up with a better word. Um, so one word is meaning,
Mhm.
and the other word is destiny. Maybe destiny is closer to it. It seems a bit bigger than meaning, but is there a word that comes to mind or a phrase that comes to mind that sums it up more wholly than I've been able to do so?
Um, wow. I haven't tried to put a word on it. The first word that came to me is purpose, that I am here on purpose. I'm not an accident. I'm not something that shouldn't have happened. Um, wow, yeah. I see you've tricked me up here because I don't know. I can't find a perfect word. Um,
I think it's a great word, purpose, and on purpose,
yeah.
and it's when you uh, this is a word I don't use very often, juxtapose it, right? When
Okay.
when you
Okay.
juxtapose it with not an accident,
Hmm. Yeah.
then we can play with that, right? On purpose,
Hmm.
not an accident.
Right.
On purpose, not a mistake.
Right.
Wanted, destined,
Oh, yeah.
destined for something, not
Yeah.
destined for anything.
Mhm.
Joy, the other juxtapositions, the other opposites. When you think about the joy, there wasn't much joy in this room.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, then that scopes it out. I'm just riffing on it, really.
Yeah. We're just 18. Yeah. We're just right across the table from each other. We're just talking.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think, and that's where I come back to that God uses everything. He has purpose for everything. He doesn't waste it. Whether I do something wrong, I, you know, don't follow him, I don't obey him, whatever. He uses that in my life just like he uses when I am faithful and I do what he asks me to do. Um, and I just think that's incredible because it doesn't start. It's like, okay, if you do well day one, then day two is going to be better. If you do well day two, then day three is going to be better. I, I think for a lot of the adult adoptees I talk to is that option is on the table for them right now, regardless of what their previous 18 years, 20 years, 25 years, ever how old they are, have looked like. Knowing that you are purposeful, that you are here for a reason, that there is someone who does love you perfectly, unconditionally, without fault, and you can find healing. You'll find it the rest of your life. I mean, it's not something one day, okay, that's it, we're all good now. But he will walk you through. I mean, to me, that is just, yeah, and that they'll bring community around you to speak encouragement into you and love you well and be your sounding board when you need to just say, I just got to get something off my chest. I've just struggled with this for years. And to have a safe place to do that. I mean, it goes right back to that community we talked about earlier. And, you know, God is faithful. He'll bring those people together. And there are enough people out there like us who don't mind sitting down across the ocean or across the table to say, sure, let's chat for a few minutes, have a cup of coffee, then um, that there are people to meet with. There are people who come alongside you, either 18 inches apart or across the screen somewhere. And I just encourage people to look for that, to find that, to be willing to try that. And he desires that we heal. He desires that we find joy in our story. It goes back to what helps you thrive, finding joy in the story that you have, that is you.
Does he see us whole?
Oh, he does. Yes. I mean, through his, obviously, I believe in salvation through Christ. And yes, but absolutely in that we are seen as whole. Doesn't mean we're perfect. Doesn't mean that we've got it all figured out. Doesn't mean we're going to stumble or that we don't still hurt. We don't have pain and trauma, but we don't do it alone. And yeah, I know we've got a few minutes. You asked me something when you gave me the what helps me thrive. I'm gonna read some scripture to you, Simon. I'm sorry,
Great.
that's who I am. This
Go for it, Anita.
this has been my some of my core statements that speak to me. This is from Psalm 139. It's 13 through 16. For you, God, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Your eyes saw my unformed body, and all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. When I read that, it totally explains how there was no human joy necessarily in the delivery room, but there was heavenly joy. My parents took a brave step and decided to take this kid home, not knowing what she was going to do. Totally made sense. That they, from the beginning, celebrated their choosing of me, that I was adopted, giving me a beautiful story of adoption. That I found there were a lot of people who were not real crazy about me because I was adopted. I mean, again, it wasn't very popular, but there were more people who loved me and accepted me and walked with me and help me see myself more truly as, as purposeful and being here and knowing that he used foster care in a few weeks of my life and brought it full circle later in my life. Um, yeah, I mean, that's what that's what helps me thrive right there. That's it.
That's beautiful, Anita. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Anita. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye bye.